There are many different election systems used across the world to elect a unique position like Prime Minister, or to elect multiple winners such as Members of Parliament. These systems take variation in the processes that are used, but don't represent the population's preference accordingly. The situation that we were presented with involves three candidates, A, B and C. If A received 40% of the votes, B 35% and C 25%, then A wins. However, note that only 60% of the population did not vote for A. So is there a best way to represent the population's preference that includes the majority? There are many indexes of disproportionality that allow the judgment over how representative a system is, in which we've looked over in the course of our project. Forms of democracy date back to groups of hunters reaching decisions by coming to consensus. One of the first known democratic models was the Athenian model, established in Athens in the 5th century BC. This showed a change from monarchy to democracy. The Athenian leader introduced a politically reforming system which split the population into 10 tribes, and 50 representatives were elected to form an assembly. First past the post is the voting system used in the UK, Canada, India, and the US. It aims to create a manufactured majority to assign the correct share of seats based off this majority. This, in theory, creates a parliament that gives the favoured party overall majority whilst penalising minority parties. First past the post is a fairly simple process, however it does exclude the smaller parties.
Some voting systems can be more or less proportional. These systems are described as proportional representation and differ from systems such as first past the post, known as majoritarian systems, in that they are designed to spread the seats proportionally rather than appointing all the representatives to the majority of electors, denying representation to all minorities. An example of proportional representation system is the additional member system used in Germany. This works by giving voters two ballots. On the first ballot are the local candidates from different parties who are standing, and the voter marks their preferred candidate to be their constituency representative. On the second ballot are the different parties. Each party will have published a list of candidates in advance. A vote for a party on the second ballot is a vote for their whole list of candidates. A pro of the additional member system is it leads to more voter satisfaction as all votes are considered. However, a con is it leads to extremist parties getting a lot more seats. For example, in Germany, the AfD, Germany's equivalent of the BNP, got 12.6% of votes and 13.3% of seats. The alternative vote method used in Australia works by having voters rank candidates for the one for their favourite, two for their second favourite, and so on. They can rank as many or as few candidates as they wish. A candidate is elected if the majority of voters rank them at number one. If no party receives a majority, the party with the fewest number one ranks is eliminated, and the people who rank that party first have their second choice used as a first choice. This process continues until a party receives a majority and is elected. A pro is it almost eliminates tactical voting, which means it leads to a very good representation of the people's views. On the other hand, a con is the system means losing parties, normally extremists, get more of a say. However, it has been proven extremist voters' votes are not decisive on the outcome of an election.
The D'Hondt method is a way of assigning seats, and the people vote in the normal way, and then this formula is used to allocate the seats. And what V is the number of votes each party gets, and S is the number of seats allocated so far. So to start with, Q is just the number of votes because S is 0, and then as S increases, and then the seat on the first round goes to the person with the most votes, but then this means that the S increases, so their queue decreases, meaning that the next seat is probably going to go to a different party. So if you look at an example of this, let's say Party A gets 45% of the votes, Party B gets 35, and Party C gets 20. So the first seat is going to go to Party A, and so their value of Q is going to decrease in the next round. And that means that the next seat is going to go to Party B, and this carries on until all the seats have been allocated. And whoever has the most seats, obviously, would win. So this is the UK elections, the most recent UK election. So this is, where's the laser? This is what it actually was with first past the post. This is what it would have been if all the seats had been allocated with the Hunt method, and this is what it would have been if it was just standard proportional representation. So as you can see, the Conservatives and Labour did slightly better if it had been first past the post, but the Hunt method favours larger parties more than a typical proportional representation, and this shows that the Hunt method is sort of like a halfway point between normal proportional representation and first past the post. So what is the best voting system? And in fact, this guy Kenneth Arrow actually proved that there can be no perfect voting system. So he decided that these three things were something which was essential for a good voting system. And they seem like quite trivial things that most people would agree are essential. And Arrow actually proved that there's no possible voting system where this can actually work. All of these things can actually work. We've understood that proof, but haven't got time to show it.
So, after Arrow's impossibility theorem was proven, researchers decided that it was necessary to develop a method of assessing how representative an election was. This method is the Gallagher Index, shown by this formula. It is a measure of an electoral system's relative disproportionality, and it measures how representative an election was. It is measured using this formula, where V is the percentage of votes and C and S is the percentage of seats that a party receives. This value is then summed by the sign sigma, and the closer this result is to 0, the more representative the election was. Even though this index is less sensitive to the addition of smaller parties, it doesn't consider a voter's secondary preference. The Gallagher Index for the UK's past 3 elections is 6.5, 15.1 and 15.6. Two other indexes which are frequently used are the Ray Index and the Loosemore-Hanby Index. They are very similar because they both take the absolute value of the deviations between the percentage votes and the percentage seats that a party gets and sums it. However, the Ray Index on the left here divides this value by the number of parties, which makes it very sensitive to the addition of smaller parties. However, the Loosemore-Hanby Index was then developed 4 years later to avoid this problem by dividing this value by 2 instead of n. As a result, the Loosemore-Hanby Index always provides a higher value than the Ray Index. This is a graph of simulated election results produced by a code written in Swift. Each party is represented along the x-axis, and the number of seats they receive is on the y-axis, and the different colours represent the different voting systems that were used. The results were taken on the same sample of people with a wide range of biases, and we attempted to simulate the idea that in alternative vote, if a voter puts a left-wing party as their secondary preference, it is unlikely that the first preference was a right-wing party. We did this by changing the probabilities within the code. As you can see, the results from different election systems produced entirely different results, and this shows how much changing a voting system can alter the overall result of an election. However, as you can tell from our presentation, it is unclear as to which system, if any at all, is the best way forward. Thank you for listening.